Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Thomas Jefferson said, "If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done." Benjamin Franklin said, "Without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning." Basically, get off your duff, get to working, you've got dreams, you've got goals, you've got to do what it takes to get them. Like, subscribe, comment, show what your opinion is. Let me know if you like what you've seen. And I thank you for your support. One of the things that worries me as we grow government is the tendency for large governments to turn into police states. They try to control everything, and while there are some very good police in this country, there are also cops that are good guys, good women. There are still police that believe that they have ultimate authority over people. I don't believe that. They're government employees. Yes, they've got a supposedly dangerous job to do. They've got a tough job to do, sure. But at the same time, there are so many cops that don't want to show common respect. They don't show professionalism. They are, quite honestly, thugs. And defending them when they act like that is ridiculous. No, we're not going to talk about George Floyd. Yes, we're going to talk about the raid that happened down in Arkansas, but there are other things that we need to talk about when it comes to police. One of the reasons that I started paying more attention to the police happened about around 10 years ago. There was a police officer, this was in rural Georgia, sorry. And he spotted a escaped felon. Guy was supposed to be in jail or prison, I don't know which, but he had escaped, and a police officer saw him, was standing in a yard in rural Georgia, watching. He had called for backup when a kid of the area, I'm not sure if it was the kid that belonged in the yard that this cop was in, or if this kid belonged to one of the neighbors. Kid was out running around like country folk do, and this kid had his family dog with him. Now this is 8 or 9-year-old kid. The kid comes up because he sees a cop. There are quite a few folks in the country that are raised, hey, there aren't that many cops, and the few cops that there are, you respect them. Or at least try to. Well, if the dog walks up, cop looks down, he's supposed to be watching this escaped felon waiting for his backup to arrive. He looks down, sees a dog, he pulls his service pistol out of its holster and shoots the dog. The dog wasn't attacking him. The dog was standing there with his owner, this 8 or 9-year-old boy. The cop shoots the dog. The bullet thankfully doesn't kill the dog, but it passes through the dog and goes into the knee, thankfully not killing the boy, but it still goes into the knee of that 8 or 9-year-old boy. That got me looking into the fact that cops now automatically try to kill family pets and are applauded for it. There are people that I have heard that go, "Oh, but you never know when the animals are dangerous." Then you don't need to be a cop if you're just going to go around shooting random house pets. And also the simple fact of that he also shot a kid inadvertently while not doing his job. His job was to watch that felon, not shoot a family dog that, for no reason whatsoever, that he had to shoot the dog. And that got me thinking. And then there's also the fact of that cops, it doesn't matter what your skin color is. This is not a, oh, but look at what they do with minorities. No, they do that with everybody. Try being homeless in this country. Seriously. What they do to the homeless, and the homeless don't even have any advocates. Especially if the homeless person's mentally ill. Being mentally ill in this country is a surefire way of getting killed in this country. Take a look at also Georgia, Atlanta area. Wasn't quite 10 years ago. I think he was an Iraqi war veteran. He was a veteran, had seen time overseas. He snapped. But he didn't snap in a violent way. He was running around outside naked. It's an apartment complex in Atlanta. And this little white dude who was a cop, and I'm stressing this. This was a big black man who was completely naked. Unless he had stuck a gun or a knife up his rectum, he had no weapons on him. It was 100% certain he had no weapons on him. And the cop that was facing him was smaller than him and white. Needless to say, that caused a controversy just because of skin color. As somebody who advocates for my brother and sister veterans, and as somebody who advocates for those who are mentally ill, I don't care what his skin color was. This man was a brother veteran, and he was also mentally ill. And you're going to shoot him, which this little white cop did. And the reason I know for a fact that he was a little white cop is because I actually talked to an Atlanta cop around this time. The cop knew him. Now, I am not going to say why I phrased it that way, or how I phrased it with this cop who I was talking to. But the cop took a minute to have to quit laughing because he said it kind of made sense what I said. And there was no reason to shoot this guy, other than the fact that he was mentally ill, and this cop, who should have, pulled non-lethal on a naked man who you knew had no weapon, instead he killed this man who had served his country overseas in a war zone. So yes, I have a problem with the police and their reactions to people. But let's show you a few things. This video is of a young man in Louisiana. We're going to talk about it.
There's another cop on the other side, like the passenger side. He was twisting my leg like he was trying to break it, telling me he was going to break it.
Tonight, we hear from the man at the center of an excessive force complaint that led to a Lafayette police officer being fired. That surveillance video you're looking at now was taken inside the Lafayette Parish Jail on November 28th.
The man in handcuffs was arrested on domestic abuse and resisting an officer charges. And 3's on the street tonight. Victor Georges joins us from outside the jail with new insight from the man at the center of the case. Victor.
The incident happening right here inside of Lafayette Parish Jail. The man who was arrested claiming he was a victim of police brutality, and now he's telling his side of the story. It's an interview you'll only see on 3.
When they came and they started asking me, like, what happened, and I started telling them.
Dennis Lessard was arrested in November when his girlfriend called police after a night of drinking that led to a fight.
So when he told me to put my hands behind my back, I put my hands behind my back, and next thing you know, they pinned me to the ground and they started dragging me to the cop car.
Lessard says he was pulled from his dreads and another officer was beating his legs.
There's another cop on the other side, like the passenger side. He was twisting my leg like he was trying to break it, telling me he was going to break it.
Lessard was brought to the Lafayette Parish Jail, where he is seen on video with now former officer Pablo Estrada. But Lessard tells me he couldn't, claiming he was in pain from his rough arrest. Lessard says he was in jail for 2 days and now he's ready to take legal action.
I really want to take it to court because that was really wrong. I understand, you got a job to do and everything, but you ain't really have to do all that.
Lessard's girlfriend, who called police, now says she wishes things had gone differently.
Do you regret calling the cops that night?
Yeah, to see him going through there, yes.
Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office tells me they did not press any charges on former Officer Estrada. They reviewed the information and sent it back to LPD. The department fired Estrada in February, 3 months after the incident. 3's on the street, I'm in Lafayette. Victor Georges, KTC TV3.
Lessard was arraigned earlier this month on those domestic violence and resisting arrest charges. He has a pretrial hearing in May. Now, as for the former police officer, we've reached out to Pablo Estrada and his attorney. We've yet to hear back.
There are thousands of videos online of police being inappropriate. Now, there is some, I'm not even going to call it respect, common courtesy whenever I deal with cops that I will give them, just for the simple fact of that they're human, and I try to be courteous. But that's the problem. There are so many of these videos that you watch that the cops aren't being professional, aren't being courteous, aren't being respectful, any of those things. They're automatically trying to demand complete obedience. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't care who you are. I don't think that you should be obeying a government employee. That's the first thing that you need to consider a cop. They're not anything but a government employee. Now, if it's a situation in which, yes, there needs to be some common sense approach where people are not using common sense, okay, fine. But when they're interacting with the public, when they're arresting somebody, you can show professionalism. This is what causes these communities in this country to have problems with them. Why you have defund police movements. I don't agree with the defund police movements. I think it's an extremist viewpoint, and it is. We need police officers. We also need police officers who are trained to not shoot animals just because they're there. We need police officers who don't automatically go to violence. It's called a guardian mentality. That's what cops should have. They need to understand the guardian versus warrior mentality. And most cops have a warrior mentality, which is a bad thing. And we need cops to stop acting like every situation that they need to demand everything from you. Okay, when you pull somebody over, yes, you're needing their license and insurance, and if a person is not wanting to give it, it makes me wonder what's going on there. If you're driving, it's a legal requirement that you have a driver's license and insurance. Even if you're walking down the street, a police officer, you are legally required to have an ID on you. Now, do I believe some of these police stops need to stop? Yes. There are times that I've heard of police stops that I'm just sitting there going, what in the world are these people doing? I have been stopped. I walk I walk at the safest time that I can walk where I live at, and that is at night. And I have been stopped. Now, I've only been stopped twice over quite a bit of period of time. One of the times I had a cop sitting there acting like well, let's just say he was being a little bit more demanding than I appreciated, but I never at any time called him sir. At no time other than showing my ID, which is a legal requirement that you have on you. I'll have to find the law, or you can look it up. It's an actual legal requirement. Showing your ID is not that big of a deal. But at the same time, they go way beyond that. And let's take a look at what happened in Arkansas. I've got a video here of a local police or a local news report on that. And we're going to talk about that.
Second day, U.S. lawmakers are questioning the circumstances leading to the death of Little Rock Airport Director Brian Malinowski. He died at his home in March following a 6 a.m. shootout with ATF agents conducting a search warrant at his home. One agent was also shot. And today, as our Neil Zarang tells us, lawmakers got the chance to ask the director of the ATF about the incident.
There are numerous different things that I believe that are out there that may not be shown to be the facts when the investigation happens.
What's true and what's hearsay during the search warrant executed at Little Rock Airport Director Brian Malinowski's home is still shrouded. ATF Director Stephen Dettelbach said he wasn't aware of the mission, which turned deadly, until after the fact, and the agency does 11,000 of these types of missions a year.
You got to admit, this is a little unique. The highest paid official in the municipal government, Little Rock, Arkansas, no criminal background history, no, nothing. When it sure looks like you could have served this search warrant when he wasn't there, but you decided not to.
The hearing revealed new video showing ATF agents gathering near Malinowski's home 1 week before the search and the same spot the morning of it. Malinowski's family alleges the first attempt was canceled because Brian was not home. California Republican Darrell Issa questioned why Malinowski needed to be home since there was no arrest warrant issued, just a search warrant for dealing with firearms without a license and unlawful acquisition of a firearm.
So you alleged a crime, but you didn't seek to arrest him, did you?
It's not fair to do this during the pendency of a criminal investigation.
Lawmakers asked some general questions about tactics, policies, and body cameras. Not much was shared to avoid giving a blueprint to the public. But Dettelbach stated 3 years after the implementation of body cameras became mandated within the ATF, a third currently have them.
How long will this take to implement?
Currently, with what we have now, without anything else, we will be implemented across the country by end of 2026. If there's more resources, we can try to speed that up.
Regarding Malinowski, the ATF director said the most common type of firearm trafficking is now selling guns without a license. And 60% of those firearms are going to felons and those prohibited from having them.
Firearms trafficking is not a victimless crime.
Just a week ago, under an ATF rule change in compliance with the 2022 Safer Communities Act, those who can legally sell guns privately changed. The rule change is laid out over 16 pages with about 400 additional pages clarifying it.
How many firearms does someone have to sell to be engaged in the business of firearm dealing?
There's now more information than ever in the form of that rule for specific conduct-based.
I think just for a regular person, more information than ever is probably less helpful than if you sell 3 guns, you're not a dealer, and if you sell 4 guns, then you are a dealer.
Okay, in what world does a citizen of this country who has committed no crime before a certain point, who has no arrest record, anything like that, I don't care what your skin color is, if the police pull up on you like what they did with this gentleman in Arkansas, that's ridiculous. It's beyond ridiculous. They pull up while it's still dark. Now, mind you, it's 6 a.m., but most people who work during the day are not going to be up at that time, especially if it's still dark. Sounds like he had a good life. He was a well-known figure in the community. This is not somebody that you do a no-knock, hide your faces, cut the electricity to the house raid on. This is the kind of person that you go in the middle of the day. Now, the picture you're seeing above reminds me of another raid that happened down in Georgia. I did a lot of research about 10 years ago, and I'm doing research again, but there was a case about 10 years ago. The child's name was Baby Boo Boo. B-O-U-B-O-U. It's an Asian child who had a flashbang thrown into their crib while they slept. What had happened was the police got told, no police officer saw this because they didn't go out there in the middle or in the daylight. They got told that a gang member had shown up at his, I believe, grandmother's house. Well, if the police had gone there in broad daylight when everybody was awake, they would have found out that the kid, well, young man, had shown up, and the grandmother did not like this person because of their activities. So, what happens is that the cops show up in the middle of the night. Literally, it's like 11, 12 o'clock at night. Bust open the door, toss a flashbang in. That flashbang lands in the crib next to a baby and goes off and burns the baby. Well over $1 million in operations to get this child back to where this kid needed to be at, on top of the fact of that there was some life-saving stuff that had to be done. The cops didn't even want to pay for that. I mean, how many of these raids happen in this nation in which the cops don't want to pay for their mistakes? Cops busting in the door of the wrong address because they don't do their job. How many of these cops could have gone in the middle of the day in a cruiser, shown up, gone, hey, hello, I'm Officer so-and-so. This is what we were told. And they could have gotten the full story. But instead, they do these no-knock raids in the middle of the night, and they harm innocent people. This is a definition of what a police state is, because they're inducing fear. Are there people in this country that need this behavior done to them? Sure. Cartels, Russian mob, the Italian mafia. I have no problems if you're saying that you're doing these things to those types of people. The cartels need to have the fear of God put into them. Every time they do something up here, we need to put the fear of God into them. The Russian mob only respects that kind of thing. MS-13, well, to become a full member of MS-13, you've got to kill a cop. Those groups, sure, if you're saying that you're doing these kinds of raids on these violent groups, okay, fine, but you're not. You're doing these raids on people who, even if they are criminals, they aren't the type of people that you do these kinds of raids on. You show up to people's homes in the middle of the day, you can have a couple of cruisers. Don't even need to have all the cops showing up like what was done there. On top of the fact of that the ATF didn't even have their body cameras on them, even though they were supposed to. That's the thing. They were supposed to have body cameras on them. They show up when it's dark, cut the electricity to the house, and you're telling me that somebody shouldn't be coming out there to protect their home? The police are doing things, and they're claiming, oh, we have a dangerous job. No, you're making it dangerous. Seriously. Are there people that are going to shoot at cops? Sure, there are stupid people everywhere. But at the same time, this is not how you act. I'm sorry. Do I want to talk about police officers like this? No, I don't. I want to talk about cops the way I thought of them when I was growing up. How I was raised to think about what cops were. But you grow up. Cops kill family pets all the time. Cops kill individuals that they come across all the time. It's not huge numbers. Don't get me wrong. I am not saying that there is this mass percentage of people that die from cop interactions, but it is still too often, because so many of these times that we see these police brutality tapes, these cops are acting like little tyrants instead of professional and courteous individuals that they should be acting like. I don't care who they're dealing with. They should act like professional and courteous individuals, not like they're little bullies. Now, you can agree with me, you can disagree with me, I don't care. But if we don't pay attention to cops, especially with them doing some of the actions that they're doing, we're going to keep moving ourselves towards actions towards a state that I don't want to see us in. Do I believe that we are a police state? No, I don't believe that we are a police state. Do I believe that we need to worry about it? Yes, I do. And I'm going to talk about it. You can agree, disagree, I don't care. This is to get you thinking. Do I believe that police need to be reined in? Yes. Do I believe that police need to be held accountable? Yes. The situation with what's his name, Kyle Rittenhouse up in Wisconsin, could have been prevented if the violent felons that were destroying a city had been taken into custody. They weren't doing their jobs then. The raid in Arkansas against a pillar of the community should never have happened. That man should still be alive. And on top of the fact of that the ATF director, when before Congress, convicted the man without him actually being convicted in court. There comes a point where we need to realize that the police are supposed to be exactly what they are, government employees. Some of them are heroes. I will never disagree that some of them are heroes. I don't believe all cops are heroes, though. I believe a lot of cops nowadays are getting the wrong impression of what their job is supposed to be. They don't protect and serve anybody but themselves. Not all cops are like that, but you know what? There comes a point where we, as the people of this country, need to realize that we need to pay attention to what they're doing at all times. They need to be held accountable because that's exactly what they are. They're government employees. Now, if they can't act professionally, if they can't act with a certain level of courtesy, then they need not be cops. If you're doing raids at the wrong address and you're destroying property and not paying for it, well, guess what? It may look good in some action movie. That is not how things should be done in real life. And this is adding on top of the civil asset forfeiture issue. This is adding on top of the many attacks on our Fourth Amendment rights. So, yes, I do have a problem with the way policing is happening in this country, and I'm going to speak out on it. Does it mean that I'm going to sit there with a cell phone and leave my window partially up or partially down or whatever if I get pulled over? Well, number one, I'm not going to be driving because medically I'm not supposed to. But I'm not wanting to be in a car with somebody who does that. When I get a cop stopping me when I'm walking, I have no problems pulling out my ID and talking to them courteously. Most of the time, the cops that I see are younger than me, so no, they're not going to get called sir by me. And I am going to address them the way that they act. So if they're going to act like little children, I will act like they're little children. But if they act like they've got some common sense, I'll treat them like they've got some common sense. So, no, this is not a F the cops video. This is we need to think about these things. We need to discuss what is happening in this country so that we can make these government employees better at their job. This is Paul with the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now.